Planning on changing the world just like me. You could be the chairwoman and I'll be the trustee. Let me give all to your benefit. Then I'll get blessed out my deficit.
Welcome back to Your Corporate IQ. I am your host, Tangiel Johnson.
And I'm your co-host, Lachez Solage.
Lachez, you know what time it is. Look at Jim, what time it is too. I love it.
He already knows.
He already knows the drill. So, hey, if you know the drill, this is for the people out there. Is the makeup ready? Is the hair done? Pearls on?
Yes.
Okay, then let's cue the music for all you listeners. In the words of Q-Tip, high, low, or even open toe. Put your heels on, baby. And if you're due, put your boots on. Wait, doesn't matter. Thank you for joining us at Your Corporate IQ podcast, where we will discuss the perils and the pearls of corporate America with a lens from the people of color and their experience. And today's segment is on how to develop your personal brand and stay relevant with branding guru Jim Stroud. Lachez, I'm super excited about our guest today. He has over 20 years of experience in sourcing and recruiting strategies, podcasting, competitive intelligence, online community management, and training. He has built sourcing and recruiting strategies for large companies like Microsoft, Google, MCI, Siemens, and Randstad SourceRight. Jim Stroud is not only a talent acquisition leader, but he's an author, award-winning blogger, editor, and podcaster, co-host of a popular technology podcast, and producer of multiple web series on job search, recruiting, technology, and language learning. You understand why he's on this show, right? Okay. Producer of the YouTube series, The Jim Stroud Show, which is hilarious. You got to watch that. And producer of the Jim Stroud podcast. He is also the creative mind behind The Recruiting Life, which we all desperately need to watch. It's a comic strip and a newsletter, and the new editor of SourceCon. Let's first give him a big round of applause. So, Jim, before we actually say welcome, I just want to give a quick disclaimer. Our standard disclaimer here is that the views expressed by Your Corporate IQ and their guests today do not reflect the views of any company or organization. And with that, welcome the guru, the king of hacks, Jim Stroud.
Thank you. I feel like you can just lay me out right now. That could be my eulogy. All those pretty words. They don't get no better than that.
But it's true. It's all true.
Amazing intro.
Thank you.
Yes.
Make sure my mama hears that one.
Awesome.
We're so excited to hear about your exciting career. I just can't wait.
Thank you.
And congratulations again on becoming the new editor of SourceCon. Again,
Yay.
big congratulations to you. Fantastic.
Yay.
Well deserved.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Lachez, before we get him going, I just got to say this to the people. I met Jim at SourceCon 20 in Atlanta, and we've been connected ever since. He was leading the After Dark Purple Squirrel Challenge, and he photobombed me. I was taking a picture with my coworker, and all of a sudden you see this guy in the back go, and we've been connected ever since. And I'm so grateful. Jim, I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Sure.
Oh,
Take it
let's
away,
jump
Lachez.
in.
Yes.
Yeah, let's jump in. Let's go back, right? Take us through your talent acquisition journey to include. So when you do this, include some of these cutting edge strategies that you've used over the years. So just take us through the journey, but include those wonderful things.
Wow. That's a 20-year journey. I'm just trying to get the highlights here. I started my career in 19, which is the Stone Age. And I got into recruiting because of a girl. I was like
Now,
lot
this
of
is
things.
interesting.
Okay, so like when I was in college, my career focus was on screenplay writing and directing because I was in college to be a film director, right? And so my goal was to be the next Spike Lee at the time. And my career wasn't really getting anywhere. And it was this young lady that I thought I wanted to marry. And she said, well, if you're going to be with me, you need to get a real job. I said, okay.
I see.
Because she had a decent point because I wasn't getting anywhere with my Hollywood dreams. So I went into the Career Center at Georgia State, where I went to school. And there was a career placement room with just a bunch of want ads posted on the wall. And one of those want ads said, get paid to surf the internet. Now, at that time, this is when America Online was sending diskettes all over the place. And The internet was thought to be a place full of weirdos and creepy people. And so that intrigued me. So I said, okay, I'll go check it out. It can't be real work. It's on the internet. So I went down to the job and it was for MCI. That was the company that was hiring. And so I asked them, I said, so what exactly would you want someone to do on the internet? And she said, well, her name was Rachel. So remember her to this day. She said, well, people are posting their resumes on the internet and we need people to find them for different jobs. And I thought to myself, who will put their resume on the internet? It's full of crazy people, right? But I said, so how do you do this? How do you do it? And she switched the topic to something else. And I thought, oh, you don't know how to do it. I said, well, makes sense. You want to hire somebody to do it. So when the interview was over, I went home and I went to Google, which was on Yahoo, believe it or not, for those who haven't been on the internet as long as I've been. Google was owned by Yahoo at one point. So I went over to Yahoo, got on Google, looked at the help menu because I didn't even know how to search on the internet then. So I read their help menu, figured out how to put in my keywords and so forth. And I looked on MCI's career section and I saw the jobs they were looking to hire. And I just said, okay, they're looking for a telecom engineer. I did a search for telecom engineer on Google. It showed me some results. I found 2 resumes, sent it over to her, and I said, "That's what you want?" And she said, "Hired." And I've been in it ever since.
Yes.
And it's been a really, really wild ride. Some of the things that I've done over the years that were cutting edge at the time, sort of mainstream now, is one thing I did was using videos to source candidates. So at one point in time, I was on Microsoft's international recruiting team, right? And so we would look for people literally all over the world to work for Microsoft, and we would get them to come to a facility in Vancouver, Canada. And we were competing with everybody for these folks. So one thing I did to make it sort of stand out was I had a little flip camera, and I walked around the facility and I said, so what's it like working here at Microsoft? Tell me in 30 seconds or less, go. Like, it's great, it's wonderful. Yeah. You look at the video and you see that these were not professional actors. So I would put the videos together, I post them online. And then when people were doing a search for what's it like to work at Microsoft, my videos would pop up. And then the video would say, if you want to work here, email Jim at Microsoft. He's the guy to talk to. And so people would email me about my video that they saw and I would hire them. And I did that with videos there. I also set up also dating myself, a MySpace page. And on my MySpace page, I talked about why it's so cool to work at Microsoft. I also would use podcasts as well, because there was one particular job that sort of started me doing this. It was a role for an escalation engineer, which was a glorified tech support role. And so when I would interview somebody for that role, they would say, okay, I don't want to be tech support. I want to work on Xbox or something else cool inside of Microsoft. So people would apply for the job, and then they'll move somewhere else and the job would stay open all the time. So this was a constant problem. So I said, why don't we create a podcast interviewing somebody who's in the role, put some music behind it, use a little reverse psychology and say, we don't hire just anybody for this role. It takes a special breed to be an escalation engineer. If you think you're that special breed, we'll talk to you. But if you're not that special breed, don't talk to us. And so that worked. People started applying for their role and we got it filled, and people stayed in the role because they applied to be in that specific role, not just to get into Microsoft. So did things like that. Use comic strips at one point. I'm making fun of the recruiting industry because people read the comics and think it was funny and say, I'm interested in your company because of that. I did a lot of things like that for Google. Had a lot of fun at Randstad SourceRight when I was their global head of recruiting and sourcing strategy. That was one of my favorite jobs. No shade on any job I've had before or since, but I really loved my job at Randstad SourceRight because I got to travel the world solving recruiting issues. And if you can see the world and let somebody else pay for it, I highly recommend it. it. So yeah, that's a little bit of behind the scenes. I know I'm missing a lot, but yeah, those are some highlights.
Yeah, that's what I wanted you to do. I wanted you to share some of the, kind of out of the box strategies you've used over your career. I guess I was going to ask you, what was the catalyst for this type of innovation and creativity as it relates to talent acquisition or recruitment? Was it your early education? Because I did see that actually. I did see that your education really kind of was in film, video, and cinematography. So I wanted to know if that was the catalyst for this type of path that you went or approach, or what was it?
It was that. And I'm a very curious and curious person, like to experiment quite a bit. And I'm also more of a apologize later and ask permission kind of person. Like when I did the Microsoft video thing, I didn't ask permission, could I do a video? Because that would have been a lot of red tape. I just did it. And I posted it on my own website. And by the time people saw it and questions about it, I already made some hires. So they're like, oh, well, all right, you made some hires from it. Go ahead and keep doing it, right? But some of the other things that I did that made me successful in recruiting was just being willing to experiment. And because I would experiment, when people were doing searches for different things, my name would pop up, not necessarily because I was the most talented or the smartest or anything, but because I just took a chance and no one else was taking a chance in doing it. So if a software engineer, for example, is looking for another gig and they're looking for jobs, my video would come up. If they were doing a search for how to do something with mobile phones or something like that, they would see an article or something that I wrote or some article that I shared saying, I really like this mobile technology. You know, the iPhone thing is huge at the time, right? This is really the future. And so other engineers would see that and say, wow, this recruiter is different from all the other recruiters because he's not just asking me for my resume and going away, but he seems like he knows something about the technology that I'm recruiting for. So I'm going to talk to him and network with him because he seems to have an interest. He's not just pushing papers around. So that made me stand out from a lot of other recruiters.
Wow. I have to kind of pause here. I want to make sure that you get your flowers, as they say, for this, because it sounds like something in this context. This is the things that we're doing now. So this is what recruiters do today. But when you think about way back then, there's nothing like that going on. That is not how recruiters conducted searches. And even today, I still think you're an innovator, even in terms of how most recruiters are still operating today. This is way outside of the box. Again, for today and for certainly back then, to utilize video, to use podcasts, to use, again, I just don't even know where you came up with that. Again, I know you had that background in film, and I have to believe that was kind of in there, your courage to do that. You already had that background, you know what I mean? And just thinking about what are some ways to set myself apart. And then you already had this film background. It's just so outside of the box. It was unlike anything else you saw. No one else could have taught you that because no one else was doing it. So this is completely self-taught. This is your own innovation. We have to stop and say that this is unheard of at that time. And again, still unheard of today in terms of most recruiters, right, Tangiel, that we're working with are not even doing these things.
We might as well just go ahead and say, I was just going to say, we might as well go ahead and say anybody who's putting out a video using it for recruitment, hey, it started with Mr. Jim Stroud. You know, it just started with...
That's right. The originator.
Let's go ahead and give it the originator.
The inventor.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm putting you down for my eulogy for sure.
No, that's the truth. I mean, my goodness, to do a podcast for recruitment, again, it's not even something that recruiters are doing today, certainly because you're in the weeds of things, right? I think the flexibility and the creativity that you had the time and space to experiment, I think is outstanding. And I think that shame on, some of these organizations that don't allow for this type of creativity. It's just a bunch of transactions to the end of time. You really hamper the kind of creativity that you've actually used in your career.
Yeah. I think a lot of managers are like, I need 10 people. I need them now. Give me 10 candidates. And then they don't get back to you. And it's just, but yeah. It does take a lot of forward-thinking managers as well to accept change and accept experimentation on it for sure.
Did you ever get any pushback with your approach? I mean, again, it's completely different from anything that any of the managers or leaders knew at that time. Did you get any pushback?
I got some, but not a lot because I was able to prove that it was working. If it blew up in my face, then I probably got more pushback. But because it was working, I no one really said anything. It's sort of like if you can prove that it works, no one's going to give you any trouble. Well, shouldn't give you any trouble. So yeah, I was fortunate in that regard.
Early adopter and risk taker. Let's add those two things.
That's it. Experimentation. It's fun, and it works. Certainly worked for you, Jim. What kind of keeps you fresh in recruitment? I mean, this is a kind of ever evolving and changing discipline. How do you stay fresh and relevant in this space?
I like to read a lot. I read a lot of information on what's going on in recruiting, but a lot more outside of recruiting. And then I may relate it to recruiting in some way. I gave an example. This is a way out example. In my capacity as a source content editor, I write a lot about technology and recruiting and what's cutting edge and what's coming next, that kind of thing. So I was reading about Elon Musk's company Neuralink, which is a company that produces a brain-computer interface. It's pretty much sticking wires in your head and connecting to the matrix, right? And then you'll be able to work a computer with your thoughts. And it's designed to help people who are paralyzed, right? To still do stuff on the computer when you're paralyzed. And so I thought, okay, today the focus is on helping paralyzed victims still maneuver technology with just their brain. and I asked the question in the SourceCon forum, would you get connected to this brain connected interface if it meant that you could do your work faster, better, or more efficiently? If you can just sit back somewhere and go, I want to find a software developer in Bruin, and you thought about it and the computer did everything by, just by thought, could you do it or would you do it? And so that's a poll that I put in literally just earlier today. So that's something that was totally out of the realm of recruiting, but I thought it was interesting and I related it to recruiting and sourcing it in some way. So I do a lot of things like that. You don't really think about comic strips, for example, in recruiting world, but again, something outside of recruiting and then bringing it into the industry in some way. So that's where I get a lot of ideas that way.
Awesome. And making it fun. I think a lot of what's interesting about you, there's so many things that are interesting about you, but I think that your content is fun, right? It takes something that could certainly be transactional, certainly the way some folks are doing it. And that's to me very boring, and make it into something that is fun and that is worthwhile and something that's exciting to do. So I, applaud you for that. Because again, we're all in this discipline together. So anyone that's doing that, for our industry, I applaud that for sure.
I appreciate that. I've always had the mindset that to train or teach, you got to put some sort of element of entertainment in there. And while you are amusing people, they're awake. And while they're awake, they're listening to whatever you're saying. So pretty much if I'm speaking at a conference or if I'm writing an article or producing a podcast or doing a video, there's always some form of entertainment in there at some level. Because I figure you got to keep you awake long enough for you to hear what I'm trying to say.
Wow. Anything that supports innovation in our industry, I'm so excited about that. And I want that to be maintained. So I can, again, appreciate the work that you're doing, because I don't think that there's enough of us trying to maintain that, right? The innovation piece of talent acquisition. It's really like a means to one's end. And that's not what we should be in this business to do. It's not this, one placement at a time. Where's the strategy? Where's the technology? And where's the innovation? So there needs to be more Jim Strouds out here, more opportunities to continue in a strategic and technology and innovative space as it relates to talent acquisition and elevate this work.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. I think so. We've talked about this over and over, but really just kind of a modern recruiter doing things that were way ahead of your time. So like a blend of recruiting and branding professional is kind of how I see what you've done over the years. Do you think that employers of today will take this on, will continue to kind of have this blend of recruiter and branding professional in one?
I think it would be to their advantage to do so. If you look at, this is another example of taking something outside, bringing it in, which I think I may have been doing it now in retrospect, is becoming recruiters and the sourcers should become more like influencers, because there are a lot of AI tools out there in general to find candidates for any kind of job out there. But what I think a lot of people may not realize is that they only find information that's out there. There are a lot of people who are really, really good who don't put the information out on LinkedIn per se, or certainly don't put their resume out there because they're that good, they're that connected. And when they want a job somewhere else, they get it through their network. For those kind of people, you got to attract them to you, right? And so in order to attract them to you, you have to position yourself to be found. So doing that is creating content. It's creating articles and podcasts and videos, whatever, so that people who are interested in what you're saying will say, oh, that's interesting. When I'm looking for a job, I'm going to think about this particular person. So I can even imagine that a lot of the younger Generation Z, millennials, who see the influencers on YouTube who want to be influencers, I would challenge them to say, hey, learn about the technology, whatever it is a potential employer is doing, and become an influencer for that company, so that people are thinking, hey, you know what? I want to get into company X. I know Jim produces a lot of content around company X because he loves working at company X so much. If I want to work there, I'm going to talk to Jim. So then you become the person to talk to for that role, for that company. So I would encourage a lot of younger recruiters and sources to start thinking about how can they position themselves to be the recruiter for a particular company or for a particular industry. That'll pay dividends on down the road for sure.
I want to stay on this topic for a second. This idea of the recruiter and employer branding role as one. I don't think that, and it's weird to me that companies haven't figured this out and haven't mastered even the understanding of that concept. I really think that, again, when we look at someone like yourself, we can see that a lot of even large companies are behind in this, right? Yeah. So I think that some of us like myself that have taken that on. So even if it wasn't a part of my core work, I've taken on the employer branding piece on my own, but it's not something that I was hired to do both. I'm not joining a company and they're saying that, hey, this is what your role is. I've taken it on. how do we get to a place where individuals are compensated for that, right? You're basically doing this for free, right? So I think it's something we have to stop and understand the interim as we deal with the transition in this, that you have individuals like myself that have done that work basically for free. And with no recognition for that, but it's a wonderful thing to do, and it's ideal to blend a recruiter and an employer branding function together. But it's not valued in this kind of interim state as these companies or maybe leaders don't have the imagination.
Sure. That is a good question. I have two ways of looking at it. One, there is, and I forget what the trend was called, but it was a TikTok trend or something where people were saying, it's 5 o'clock. I do not stay past 5:01. 5:01, I'm out. I'm only going to do what you pay me to do, which means that certain things just aren't going to get done. Except during this amount of time. And that got a bit of pushback from a lot of people, mostly in my generation. I think y'all are younger than me, but in my generation, people were like, that's not how you go to work. You go to work and they hire you to wash dishes, you sweep the floors too. It's just extra. That's just part of what you're supposed to do. So there's that mindset. And then it's like, I'm only going to do what you pay me to do, so I'm not doing the extra stuff. Don't look at me that way. That could limit your career progression long term, because the powers may say, okay, this person isn't as think about it, doesn't have the ambition that I want to go into the company. So that can be limiting in that regard. But I do hear you say about, you still need to get paid, which I totally understand that too. So for that other mindset in that same, the other mindset for that is, I think, make a list of everything you're doing, everything extra that's not in your job description, and put it in your resume. Put it in your LinkedIn profile.
Oh, yeah.
Just like every year, people may look at your credit score to see where you are in your credit score. Every year or twice a year, you should know what your value is in the job marketplace, right? And one way you can do that is keep your LinkedIn profile updated and see what kind of attention you're getting, right? And start positioning yourself as, you know what? I am someone who can do a lot of different things. This is proof of what I can do. Recruiter contacts you. You can say, you know what? I'm good right now, but thanks for reaching out. It's good to be looked at. It's good to be acknowledged, Let me get your information down, and when I am looking, I'll come back to you later. So I tell people, do that, make a list of everything you're doing. Then secondly, I say, do you know where you want to be long term? So to say you're a software developer, do you want to be a vice president of technology or CTO on down the road, right? Then what you can do is, while you're making a list of everything you're doing now, go on LinkedIn and look at 10 or 12 different CTO LinkedIn profiles, right? And then you say, you know what? Looking at their profile and looking at mine, at this point in their career, they were doing A, B, and C, right? I'm at the same point in my career as they were back then at this level. What am I not doing that they were doing at their point? Okay, so now you have the mindset of, although I'm not being paid, I'm going to take on more work, not because I want to necessarily do a great job at the company, which you may want to do, but you're being more forward thinking. You say, okay, how can I do A, B, and C and X, Y, and Z so I can honestly put this on my resume and my profile, making me more valuable so somebody can come and get me up out of here.
So I get what you're saying. It's there, and I want to make clear on this that that's understood by me. So I understand a value in everything that I'm doing. So I think that it's really important for maybe even the young listeners or early career to understand this concept and I love that you explain this in this way. You might not get an immediate monetary benefit from the work that you're doing. So if I'm taking on the branding piece, it pays dividends later in terms of socializing it as a skill. So it pays off in that way. So it's not a monetary, hey, this is your role, you're being paid as two things. I think that what becomes kind of challenging is when you, or maybe watch the percentage of time that you're spending on that other thing that you're doing as well. Because again, understanding what your core function is. But this is clear. I think that the immediate gain is not something that you have to concern yourself with. It's more of, how do you monetize it later? How is it going to be fruitful to you in your pursuit of something that you're moving into, for sure.
And before I want to switch to Tangela, I think she has a burning question for me. Is this. One thing that I think a lot of people have to ask themselves, who do I ultimately work for? Do I work for the company or do I work for me? If I work for me, I'm going to do all I can to beef up my resume so I can get something better.
Yes.
If I work only for this company and I've mastered all the skills I'm going to get out of this company and they have nothing else to offer me but a paycheck, then maybe I will sort of sit back a little bit because I'm not getting anything else from this company beyond a paycheck, if that's what my ambition is. But if I ultimately work for myself and I'm not hitting the salary threshold that I want to get, then I'm going to do more work because it's not about per se making the company more profitable. It's about making me more profitable. And I'm going to be as profitable as I can doing all that I can at this company because everything I take from everything I learned from this company, I'm taking with me somewhere else with more money.
That's it. That is it, my friend. That is it. That's how you do it. That is
That's
how
it.
you do it. That's one of the hacks, folks. One of the pearls. We're calling it hacks
One of the
in this
pearls.
particular episode, but those are the pearls.
I gotta jump in. I gotta jump in. First of all, it's just so refreshing to hear someone else talk about things that you absolutely know are true, both in practice and in theory, because I'm right there with you, Jim, and I bet you we're the same age. I'm not going to disclose that right here, but I bet you're the same age.
22.
You got it. You got it.
That's right.
I just wanted to tack on to what you were saying and maybe just add a little more clarity for the listener. And that is today's market is so different when it comes to recruiting. The candidate is different. The recruiter is different. The manager is different. The company is different, right? Especially after the pandemic, everything's so different. But we have to kind of meet them where they are. So if you choose to be two people in one, a recruiter as well as a marketeer, two things that you could do to show your value is one, definitely partner with your marketing department because they don't know anything about recruitment. Right. But yet they want to market for the company. That's one. And then two, of course, measure what has come about from your video or your innovation. Hey, where did you hear about us? How did you learn about the job? And then be able to bring that back with some numbers because right now everything is analytics and data. So that's a way to validate with the companies of today, those efforts. And I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Corporate America got to do that CYA.
Yeah. Help you with your next assignment, maybe internally or externally. You can move into that thing. If you want to move into the employer branding and make that 100 of your role, you've already stepped into that with the work that you've done. Absolutely. I think we're clear on this, that there's an extreme value in proceeding this way.
Definitely. You have to diversify your skill set as much as possible, especially in this age of AI. A lot of people are nervous about the machines taking the jobs away. And to some degree, there is a concern there. But you just have to increase the relevance of what you bring to the table, increase your interpersonal skills because it's a lot easier to find somebody for a job, press a couple of buttons and boom, candidate comes up. But to talk to someone and say, hey, I want you to uproot your life and your family and come to this other city because they will not let you work from home. So you're going to have to go to an office every day, even though you've been working from home for the past 2 years. And I want you to come over here and do this job for less money and be happy about it. That's a skill that I don't think a machine will be able to master. And that's the kind of skill that we as human beings will have. Ultimately, people want to do business with people more than a machine anyway. And I've been seeing slight tangent. I've been seeing different signs of this. Like I know that I think in New Mexico, Walmart's taking out their self-checkout machines because people are complaining that they're coming to Walmart to work. And I don't know if that's work per se, but some of the younger generation saying, just putting it across the thing is too much work.
That's interesting.
Reason. Yeah. And plus I've also seen different surveys like Boston Consulting Group recently, they did a survey where they surveyed 90 people around the world and asked them how do they like to get hired for a job. The number one way was looking at a manager face to face, shaking the hand and saying you're hired. Number two was looking at a recruiter face to face, shaking the hand and saying you're hired. All the way down at the bottom, next to the bottom, was learning they were hired from a machine. And the very last way they want to be hired is by doing a selfie and putting a new machine through a video, that kind of thing. So the human interaction, that human touch is still highly coveted, is what people want. And no matter how much these machines can do these wonderful things, if the human beings don't want to use them, then what good are they to an extent? Right. So
Jim, I don't know about you. I don't know about you, but in my day-to-day of interviewing people, I find that I'm coaching people through the interview. They're like, I don't know if I really want to leave. I'm just kind of, being passive and trying to understand. And I've helped people stay where they are.
I know what you mean.
For selfish reasons. I've also helped people really think long and hard about, what would happen if they did interview with us and we wanted to make an offer and their company came back with, this incredible offer. Why would you stay? We know all about that, recruiters, don't we? So, you find yourself having to do these things that an AI cannot do.
Right.
Not yet. Not yet.
Right.
Yeah. Also, I think that again, we're all effective recruiters here and professionals. I think that where the magic happens is the human parts of what we do, right? It is the building relationships. It is providing a candidate experience. Again, a machine cannot do that, but I think it's to humans' advantage to exercise your human abilities, right? You're seeing a lot of humans becoming kind of machine-like, and it's just not to your advantage to do this, right? Because that's what sets you apart from the machine. So I think that's something we need to understand too. Set yourself apart even from the machine and where you add value to things. It's the human components is where we find success. Building those relationships with hiring managers, understanding what they want and what they need. And AI can't do this. Certainly not today, not yet. It can't do it. We have to do that. We are the bridge. We are the one that close the deal in the end. It's the human components that make it happen. It's not the transactions of on the front end of finding a candidate and these types of things that you can offload to a machine. You come in to close the deal.
When you said it, I was thinking about a conversation I had earlier this week about things recruiters can do to sort of make themselves more relevant in the age of AI. And my answer was sort of surprising to them. I said, if you want to develop your human skills, for lack of a better word, interpersonal skills, I said, start doing more volunteer work. Go to a homeless shelter, feed the homeless. Go to a senior living facility and spend time with the residents there. Train them how to use the DVR or something like that. And if you do things like that, where you connect with people of all levels and you can able to maintain their professionalism and make a real connection with them, you'll be developing your interpersonal skills, right?
Great.
And so that's something that I would highly suggest people do that, and maybe go to an elementary school and give a presentation. And if you can manage to keep the attention of third graders, and then when you're done, you ask them questions about what you said and what they got from it, and they're able to explain to you what you said for like 30 minutes, which is an eternity for third graders, then you are a captivating speaker. You're able to deliver information in a way that can be well received. So those are things I would suggest for recruiters do, or people do in general.
Yeah, or even just, again, like understand the human component to things. So for in terms of a candidate experience, put yourself in the place of another person or human being, right? Going through the process of being a candidate. What does that feel like? How would you want to be treated? And so this is how you respond and how you act accordingly. If you understand what that feels like as a human being, speaking to a machine or, putting out 50 or applications with no response, that's a real thing. If you start to think of your process and the way of working in that way and just add that human layer to it, it sets you apart from the machine. Again, the machine cannot do that.
Exactly. I think people would do well to sort of check out the Candy Awards. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but it's short for the Candidate Experience Awards. It's CANDIE Awards. You can look it up. The company Career Crossroads produces it every year, and they go through the trouble of applying for jobs to different companies, checking out their processes. Then they award companies that have a good process for a good candidate experience. It's called the Candy Awards. Definitely check it out for inspiration. If you're a company, you're trying to figure out what are some things they can do to make my candidate experience better, check it out for some inspiration.
Right. I love that. Why not work for companies that value candidate experience? So that's definitely another tip. That's a hack that we're going to take right now too. Use that to understand if you're a recruiter that's important to you. That's another place that you can go to understand where you want to work.
Sure. I'll throw in one extra hack here too. If you are a company, if you're in leadership, every now and then apply for a job at your own company and see how you like it. One little peeve that I have about it that I'm having flashbacks thinking about it. And it's kind of funny, but not. Applying for a job, you put your information in, and it asks you to upload your resume, you upload the resume, and then as soon as you upload the resume, it says now fill out this form, which is all the information that I just sent to you on the resume. Yeah. And so I hate that. I'm like, why ask for my resume? Why do I have to fill all this out if you just got my resume?
No.
I hate that. And I know a lot of people hate that. I made a comic strip about it. And a lot of people, that comic strip I made about making fun of that got so many likes. Oh my gosh. So
invest in parsing. Invest in a tool that parses the resume. Like, hello.
Yeah.
Cisco Systems created that with an ATS system back in. Oh my God, I think it was an innovative thing where you could just copy and paste your entire resume in an open space, and you didn't have to fill out anything. That was like the best thing ever. I can't imagine why we're not doing that with every ATS today.
I have no idea. But
I tell you what. As a candidate, though, I move on to the next application. If you don't have a parsing system, to be honest, as a candidate, I'm like, that just shows that you're archaic. So that's a no for a lot of candidates, that your system is old or outdated, that you don't even have a parsing mechanism. That's a big indicator.
And for a lot of companies, that's a lot, is a lot of times that's the person's first encounter with that company. So they're getting a negative impression about your company, or they may transfer, these angry or anxious feelings about your company because you're like the 10th company that they've applied to for that day. And I'm now getting more frustrated dealing with this. So now I'm going to transfer these feelings to your company. Now I'm not going to do any business with you. So now you've lost out on a potential customer because your candidate experience is so bad.
Yeah.
So,
wow. There's so much to ask you. I mean, you've been in talent acquisition for such a long time, such an amazing career. What are you seeing out there, in terms of, we've talked about AI a little bit, and it's unavoidable to talk about AI and its presence. It's kind of popped up here and it's just everywhere. But what else are you seeing kind of in talent acquisition? I think Tangiel and I talk about it all the time. It seems that there's rapid change, certainly not all in a good way, in talent acquisition that we've seen in a short period of time since the pandemic. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I can see the good and the bad of it, or different sides of the coin, right? So on one end, on the pro technology side, I'm seeing more of personalization, right? So for example, you go to Amazon and you see a t-shirt or something, you come back the next day, Amazon recommends 20 other t-shirts that you might like because you like the first one so much, right? So you get a very personalized experience with Amazon. I think in the very near future, we're going to see something like that with a lot of the HR tech tools. You're looking for a software developer and I'm looking for a software developer, but the results are going to be different for me than for you because of how we use it. So I see a lot of personalization that way. I think eventually we're going to see more of that kind of personalization from the job seeker perspective now, right? So I know like there are tools out there that will send out your resume to apply automatically to 50 different sites in a blink of an eye, right? So a lot of personalization, a lot of, lack of better words, candidate spam tools that allow them to apply for different jobs. For better or worse, that's definitely going to happen. On the other side of looking at AI and tech, I know a lot of people are nervous about it, but I think that there are several things happening that should make us less nervous about AI. One big one is regulation, right? There are a lot of laws already being considered and argued about right now in Congress. One law that is a law is something called New York City local law, right? And so what that law says is that when you are using these AI tools or automated employment decision tools, as they're classified, you have to relate to your employees and the job seekers, these other tools we're using. This is how it impacts our recruiting processes. Then at least once a year, these tools have to be audited to make sure they're not biased in any kind of way. So you're not excluding people of color or people of a certain age or whatever. It's fair all the way across the board. Once you have your audit, you have to post publicly the results of your audit. So if your audit was good, you post a good report. But if your tools come back with some bias, you have to post that your tools are biased, right? And so that's going to have a significant impact on a lot of organizations because, one, if you are not compliant, that's going to add up to a lot of fines. Government loves fines. So if you're not compliant with all the different rules, you got to pay some money, right? And also you're going to have to look at potential lawsuits because somebody somewhere is going to say, oh, I knew I was perfect for that job and I didn't get that job, not because I'm not qualified because I'm perfect. I didn't get the job because their technology was biased. So now I'm going to sue this company for bias because they did not hire me, even though clearly I'm the one who should have gotten that job. Or worse yet, some lawyers are going to get together and say, see, company X's hiring tool is biased. Jump on this class action suit and let's go after this big mean company. And so the lawyers get paid. People get a little money. Lawyers get big money. So that's going to happen. Now that just happens in New York, right? When federal regulations come in, you got some variation of what I just said over the entire country. That's going to bring a lot of things to a standstill. Now, a lot of the big companies, your Microsofts, your Amazon, your Netflixes, they got a printing press in the basement. They can print money all day. So they ain't gonna bother them. But the majority of businesses are small businesses and they won't be able to compete with the big boys like this. So a lot of companies may either go out of business or they're going to be only able to stay at a certain size because they can't grow big enough to use these tools because then they got to pay some money. So that's going to slow a lot of things down right there.
Wow.
Jim, I have a quick question. I have a quick question about that. So in reference to this NYC local, was the hammer like smacked from the OFCCP folks, or did it come, is that who's regulating the AI today?
I don't know which regulating body would be the one to do it. I would imagine so.
Okay.
I would imagine so, or maybe EEOC.
Oh,
It might be
okay.
them. Might be
That
them. So I
sounds
don't know
right.
which
That
body.
sounds
Yeah,
right.
but
Yeah.
this is still, even though New York State Local Law 1 is an actual law. President Biden made the executive order on it last month, so it still hasn't fully manifested yet.
I
Right?
see.
Look for some full manifestation around probably second quarter, around the summertime. That's when it'll be like, So
Right.
look for around that time. But
Ooh,
It's
it's coming.
interesting
big
that you
hat.
have an introduction of AI that's just kind of exploded, but then you have this kind of reaction to it. It's kind of behind, right? The technology is already here. And so
Correct.
the marketplace is chasing its response to it. And I wonder why companies are behind in this way. Like we knew this was coming for decades now. If we've watched The Matrix, all these movies, we knew this type of thing was coming.
Yeah.
Yet
Yeah.
companies are chasing this in a very legal way.
Yeah.
On the back end, right? Like they're chasing it. You already have the tools. You have some AI embedded technology that you'll have to revisit now. There's money that's been spent on these tools. It's interesting.
And these tools are not even perfect. It's one thing to think that these tools, make no mistakes, but they do. If you look up, it's a homework assignment, look up AI hallucinations, right? And so what AI hallucinations are is a fancy way of saying ChatGPT lies to you, right? So you can ask it, a question, how do you do whatever, right? And it'll give you an answer, and it'll sound so good and plausible.
Yeah.
But you may say, that's not quite right. Something's not right about that. So you do your own research and you see that it's not right. That ChatGPT just gave you something that it thought was the answer it gave you what it thought you wanted to see, right? And so there are other tools out there like ChatGPT, and a lot of them hallucinate. They're improving it so it doesn't hallucinate as bad, but it still hallucinates at this point. Right. Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAI, that's the company behind ChatGPT, he said in a joke in November that he probably trusts ChatGPT less than anybody else because he knows how much it hallucinates. Now, he meant it as a joke, but there's a little bit of truth in that, right?
Gotcha.
Now, when you have AI hallucinating and so many tools out there that have ChatGPT AI integrated into it, that's a big problem to a big degree, right? So that's another reason why I think we don't have to worry about it as much as I think we are, because it's not a perfect error-free technology by any stretch of the imagination at all. So,
Right.
Is there
You get
any
human to
error-free
get through
technology
that.
out there today?
say it again.
Is there any error-free technology out there?
Are there any error-free technology out there? No.
Correct.
But it's also, if you marry that to, what if the technology actually, I'll take it back. There's no error-free technology, but I think a greater danger of the no error-free technology is human over-reliance on error-free technology, right?
Yes.
So, for example,
it.
you can, more homework, do a search on people who have literally driven their cars into a lake because the GPS led them to go into a lake. I did a presentation on this for SourceCon, and I talked about how people can become so reliant on technology that they lose their common sense. And so one of the examples that I gave was, I think 6 different articles I came across where people were just blindly obeying the GPS and driving into a lake because the GPS system, even though you can clearly see in front of you there's a big body of water, but because the GPS said go straight or turn left, they still did it because they were hypnotized by the technology, ruined their car. So there's a chance of being so addicted to technology that you lose your common sense. And if you don't lose your common sense, you're also capable of losing some of your skills. Like, for example, I used to know more than one phone number at a time, but now I don't know half the numbers in my iPhone, right? If I'm going to call somebody, I got to put their name in because I don't know the number, right? That's something that I've lost because I've gotten so used to technology. I think if people become so used to using technology, they're going to forget the basics of how to do things, and we're going to lose knowledge of how to do things. And so the machines break down down the road, and we're so used to using them, we've forgotten how to repair them, how to operate without them. We're going to be stuck. So those are things I think companies need to think about as well. Sort of my little rant there. Sorry.
No,
It's so fun. There's so
true.
much in this space. There's so much. We have a long runway with AI, and that's really kind of to wrap this up in terms of replacement of recruiters or any professionals. It's like we have a long runway with this. There's a lot of humans that need to come in with critical thinking skills, right, to be that in between to sift through the information. So GPT could sound really smart, but when you look, maybe the front end of it is accurate and the back end is accurate, but in the middle of that paragraph is complete nonsense. You have to have some critical thinking skills to sift through the technology at this stage. So we have a long runway with AI. So we're here. Recruiters and professionals are here for a while. We have a long runway with this. Well, wow. Thank you so much, Jim. That was my final question. Amazing, amazing. The king of hacks, the branding guru, Jim Stroud.
Jim
I'm
Stroud.
calling y'all for my eulogy. I'm putting y'all down. Putting y'all down for the eulogy. I'm telling you.
Oh, how amazing. Well, hey, this has been so much fun. We need to do this again, Jim. We're going to come up with some other kind of topic. We want you to come back because there's more for them to know. I mean, we got to speak to the seasoned recruiter who's dealing with the robotic recruiter, just trying to stay afloat. I mean, there's so much more to talk about. So, promise you'll come back? You'll come back?
Yeah, yes. Have your AI call my AI.
Yeah,
will do.
And I'll have my avatar show up for the meeting.
That's right. So, Jim, can you tell our listeners the best way to contact you?
Sure. You can look me up on LinkedIn, Jim Stroud, JimStroud. My personal website is Jim Stroud. But most of my time nowadays is spent at the SourceCon website, which is SOURCECON, SourceCon. Check it out. And see you there.
Yes, you all want to be at a Source. If you have not gone to SourceCon, you must absolutely go live to SourceCon. You will not forget. Again, I was there in 2012 and it made a huge impact. And what's funny, Jim, I don't know if you remember, back then, y'all were talking about predictive analysis and big data. And now, what's this? 11 years later, look, where are we? We're here. It's crazy. So you want to be there. So people, stay tuned for more episodes of your Corporate IQ podcast. We're interested in hearing from you. Send us your topics and suggestions and comments to info@yourcorporateiq.com. Like us as well. Engage with us on LinkedIn. Where are we, Lachez? We're on Instagram,
IG.
YouTube. IG. We're everywhere. We would love to build an online community with you. So until next time, thank you for listening and see you later.
Open toe. You be looking good when you rock them, so put your heels on, girl. Your heels on, lady. Hit your grind hard, you drive me crazy.